से नहीं उठाता।
कितने आदमी थे?
सरदार 2 आदमी।
Salim-Javed.
आज कुछ तो बात हो गया था।
They did about 24 films together, out of which 22 were blockbusters. It hasn't happened before. I don't think it's going to happen again.
If that has not happened in the last 4+ decades, then it is reasonable to say that Salim Khan and Javed Akhtar, or Salim-Javed, uncontestably Hindi cinema's most celebrated and admired story, screenplay, and dialogue writers, will have no peers. Separated by nearly 10 years, Salim Khan, who is 88 now, and Javed Akhtar, who is 79, straddled the decade of 1970 like movie colossi who ruled everything they surveyed. A 3-part docu-series about their life and times on Amazon Prime, titled Angry Young Men, may be a tad too high on gushing admiration. It does offer insights into what and how the two did what they did, and why there may never be a marquee cinema writer like them. Javed Akhtar spoke to Mayank Chhaya Reports to offer some slices of that glorious career.
Welcome to Mayank Chhaya Reports, Mr. Akhtar. It's always a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Javed Saab, an aspect of your partnership that has not been explored, in my view, is the age difference. Mr. Khan was born in 1935. You were born in 1945. If you look at it from one standpoint,
he was not born in 1975. He was
no,
born in
35, 35,
Yeah,
35,
yeah.
I said. No, so I was saying that if you look at it from one angle, by the time he was already an adult of 20, you were still just about 10. Do you think that age difference has had any bearing on the way you constructed your work early on?
Yeah, maybe, because you see, as I said in recently, I don't know whether you have watched the documentary or not, but it is on
I have.
TV. Okay. And in that documentary, I have mentioned that as far as the work is concerned, we were equal partners, but not in a personal life. He was an elder to me, and he was like an elder brother. Actually, he and Bhabi, his wife, they were, in a way, for quite some time, they were almost like surrogate parents to me. So, he has left a great influence on my personality. I have learned many things from him. But when the work was concerned, then we were equal.
I'm interested to know how that age difference, now 10 years, one could argue, could be called almost a generation, at least in current times. How did you
Yeah.
bridge that gap?
You see, first of all, there was a lot of mutual respect for each other. In spite of the fact that I was 10 years younger than him, he never called me Tum. And obviously, I could not have called him Tum because he was my senior. So there was some kind of decency and some formality in our relationship, in spite of being very close. But there were certain holds barred.
I see. I don't want to romanticize it, but still I'm curious to know when you first met him, whenever you did.
Yeah.
What kind of an exchange was it? Was it hello, hi, kaise hain? What was it?
I was introduced to him, but I recognized him because I had seen him in many films, including Professor and Bharat and so on. So obviously, when I met him, I knew who he is, and that time he was an actor. But as I came to know him more, and we worked together in a film, Sarhadi Lutera, where he was acting and I was an assistant director and dialogue writer. So I came to know that he has a kind of a penchant for writing stories, and he narrated me a story which was very good. Although when later it was made into a film, the director made unrecognizable changes in it, and it lost its intensity. But the original, so I had heard the original story, which was very good. So he had a flair for stories. I had a flair for dialogue. So we met and we developed this relationship and screenplay, which I must say in all honesty, that he introduced me to the art of screenplay. And then obviously I learned it also. So that is how it was. So
Yes.
it was never the relationship of two equals. He was my senior in every which way.
Speaking of dialogue that you mentioned, do you remember what you felt when you first saw a character, anyone, on the big screen mouthing your lines? What was the feeling?
Well, the first film where I saw characters mouthing my line was Saradi Lutera, where
I see.
the biggest star was Mr. Sheikh Mukhtar. And
The big man, yeah.
I was working in that film for 100 rupees per month. And the director, Mr. S.M. Sagar, for some reason decided to change some dialogue in the climax. And I was, I mean, when I look back, I find it funny, amusing also. But perhaps that was my basic trait. So I walked out of the film. And I was very, very upset that how could he change my dialogue. In the first film, 100 rupees per month.
I see.
Now when I look back, I find it funny because who cares what was the dialogue in the climax of Saradi Lutera? But for me, it was very important that time. And I felt very hurt and humiliated that how could he change my dialogue? So,
But that is reflective of your passion for lines, I suppose, early on,
yeah,
right?
perhaps. And that is what Salim-Javed maintained always. We did not
Right.
allow any kind of indiscreet and random change in a word.
That means वो जो प्रोफेशनल कंसीट जो है, प्रोफेशनल एरोगेंस जो है, प्रोफेशनल
जी
सेल्फ एश्योरेंस जो है, वो पहले से ही थी आप में.
हाँ शायद वो कुछ बचपन से ही गड़बड़ थी ऐसा
I want to jump a bit to before we come to Zanjeer. You had already written three movies: Andaz, Adhikar, Hathi Mere Sathi, and Sita Aur Gida. Sorry, four movies.
जी
The first three
actually
in
Adhikar was ghostwriting. Her name was not there. Although ultimately it came into public domain and everybody came to know, and so many people mention Adhikar also. But at that time it was pure ghostwriting. The picture did not carry a credit.
Acha.
We had
But I mean, in terms of your professional work, having written the entire movies, feature-length movies, you had already done four films by the time you came to Zanjeer.
the Zanjeer was the first film where story, screenplay, and dialogue, all three were hers.
I see.
Otherwise, there
Okay.
were other writers also. Like the first film we did, Andaz, the dialogue was written by Guldar Shah.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The reason I'm asking you is this is because both Andaz and Hathi Mere Sathi had Rajesh Khanna, who was already a massive star with tremendous on-screen charisma. What was your response to him as a writer? Because you went on to be so closely identified with Mr. Bachchan, but Rajesh Khanna as a superstar of that time, how did you look at him as a writer?
Well, I mean, those were the time when the child who was born in India would say Rajesh Khanna first, then Mama and Papa. But it was a short period. And somehow came a time when we realized that it will be difficult for us to work together because, I mean, he was surrounded by so many people and so many sycophants and so many uh, yes men that it was difficult to work with him. So we parted. And then we became friendly also. And much later we did a film also with him. But the kind of film we were writing and the kind of film we had in our mind were much more suitable for an actor like Amitabh Bachchan, although he was at that time not a superstar, to say the least. But he was an unbelievably good actor. And he was the man who we felt that will be able to play our Vijay.
Right. Ironically, although you call the movie Zanjeer, you unshackled the Hindi cinema protagonist from being a veritable chocolate factory into a brooding, seething, angst-ridden man. I know you've said it many times before that when you were writing it, you were not consciously thinking of creating a persona. It just happened along the way.
No,
But when
you write any script. If you are honest to the character, and you don't try to manipulate the character like a puppet, but you accept that this is a living being. And obviously, every living being has pluses and minuses and so on. This kind of a person, what will he do and what he will not? What he will say and what he will not. If you remain loyal to the person's character, you don't use him according to your convenience, it will become a real persona in the film.
How quickly did the Zanjeer protagonist become a real persona in your mind?
Well, it doesn't happen in a particular moment, but if you remain loyal to the characteristic of the character, you see, Zanjeer he was not the first angry young man on Hindi screen. Who
No.
was Birju in Mother India? Who was Ganga in Ganga Jamna? They were angry young men, but they were diluted because they had romance, they had songs, they had dances, they had everything. What we did, that we kept this angry young man undiluted. We remained loyal to his characteristics, not only the character, but the characteristics of the character. We remained loyal. We did not ask this character to do anything at all for the box office, which is not the part of this persona. And that is why, for the first time, and totally undiluted, totally pure angry young man came on the screen.
Interestingly, I'm glad you mentioned it. In Zanjeer, there is a scene where Jaya Bachchan tells Amitabh Bachchan, "Vijay, देखो ये पर्दे कितने अच्छे हैं. जब तुम अपना घर बनाओगे, तो मैं उसमें ये पर्दे लगाऊंगी." And to which, what Amitabh said to me is perhaps one of your most memorable responses. He says, "देखा, हम अपने घर में ऐसे ही खूबसूरत पर्दे लगवाएंगे और मैं ये जानने की कोशिश भी नहीं करूंगा कि इन पर्दों की दूसरी तरफ दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है." Now, this is spoken by a man who's both angry at the same time full of subtle idealism. I don't think this line has ever been discussed by anyone before. I know it's difficult to go back and tell me what you were thinking, but it has that cadence. Tell me a bit about this particular line. "पर्दों की दूसरी तरफ दुनिया में."
We were thinking exactly what these lines are saying. You see, एक शेर है,
जी,
तुम्हारी बज़्म से बाहर भी एक दुनिया है, तुम्हारी बज़्म से बाहर भी एक दुनिया, मेरे हुजूर बड़ा जुर्म है ये बेखबरी. So what happens that we start living in our comfort, of many of us, and forget what is happening in the world, what is happening in a society. And this unawareness, this insensitivity is not proper, not right. I'm putting it very mildly. I have stronger words for it, but I'm not using them.
Right. No, this is wonderful. My compliments, because when I watched Zanjeer again, and it really jumped out at me one more time. It's interesting that it didn't register at that time. This line is still extremely relevant after nearly 50 years. Coming back to the nomenclature of Vijay, what's the story? Why? What is so special about the word Vijay for you?
No, actually, we had to name the character, and Vijay sounded a good name. And once we did it, then we kept this character wherever he came in Diwar, then in Trishul, everywhere.
Yeah.
Actually, Sholay mein bhi he could have been Vijay, but
Ji,
the
ji.
other character's name we had decided Viru. So we thought that both the names should not start with V. So instead of Vijay, we kept it Jay.
Jay, V nikal gaya, ji, bilkul.
Ji.
Coming to Diwar, a lot has been said, written about it. I'm interested to know, when you have a boy character, Master Alankar, who was, I think, a very competent young actor, and he appeared in 3 of your films. When you start a character with the tattoo that says "Mera Baap Chor Hai," you're already giving that character a trajectory in your mind, that somebody who has that is not likely going to be a saint. Uh, was
Yeah.
that the thinking process in your mind, or it was just a tattoo that could have gone and he could have been a saint with that tattoo as well?
No, no, not possible. We had the basic plot in mind, and we had to justify his anger and his bitterness. And obviously, I mean, whatever may happen, but with time, it becomes uh, off the radar sometimes, becomes vague and off focus. But this thing was uh, rather too dramatic that he has a tattoo on his hand. And he says at one time that it is not only on my hand, it's written on my soul, and no plastic surgery can remove it from there.
Right.
So that is how it was. So he was carrying it all the time. It was reminding him what had happened. And it did not become uh, soft focus or out of focus with time.
Right. To me, that is the essence of the movie, in fact. In my judgment, the movie pivots around this young boy's formative years as Mera Baap Chor Hai.
That's
Uh,
true.
yeah. It's another point that I've been wanting to ask you is among all your movies, be it Sholay, Diwar, Shakti, any number of them, which movie do
Yeah.
you think lends itself to novelization easily?
Any, if there is a story, if there is a complete narrative, which can be called a story, it can turn into a novel. What's the problem?
Given
Any,
given given a choice, if I were a publisher asking you to turn one of your movies into a novel at this stage, which one would
I
you
think,
choose?
I think Shakti will be an interesting novel because there
There
are
you go.
three characters, and all three of them are right in their own position. That makes it very interesting.
I see. I'm glad you mentioned Shakti because I'm jumping a bit. This question was my last question, but I'm advancing it. There is a scene in Shakti. I'm going to overanalyze it and second guess you as a writer, which I never do, but just for the fun of it. वो सीन है जहां अमिताभ बच्चन और दिलीप कुमार माहिम फोर्ट पे मिलते हैं
Yeah.
आफ्टर अ ग्रेट डील ऑफ टेंशंस एंड अमिताभ पूछते हैं उनसे आपने मुझे यहाँ क्यों बुलाया है दिलीप कुमार से इसलिए कि जहां तुम रहते हो वो जगह मेरे घर से इतनी दूर है कि तुम्हारा वहां आना मुश्किल होता है दैट्स व्हाट दिलीप कुमार सेज
Mhm.
and even while I was watching it for the first time in Bombay my response was were you underlining the moral distance that the father and son had traveled apart? Again, I know I'm overanalyzing it, but I would like to know what you thought.
No, no, exactly. This line means that there is such a huge gap that you cannot come to my world and I cannot come to yours. So we have to meet somewhere else. Of course,
I see.
that's what it meant.
Which character of your movies you think is substantive enough to have an entire movie around him or her at this stage?
Hmm, interesting question. Hmm, who can
I
be
mean,
that? Uh,
if you want to think a bit and come back to it, I have no problem at all.
no, no. Actually, you see, a story is mm, uh, an an interaction of different characters. If you take out the character from that story, then I think, I mean, you have characters like James Bond or say many others, Iron Man and whatever. So that is a different thing that you keep on giving them new stories. But our characters, I think they are too entrenched in the plot. So once you bring them out, I don't know where we'll take them. Maybe uh, Mr. India.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Because
because it can have any context.
the hero and that heroine today Sri Devi is not in the world, but if you imagine that she is there, I think these two can be taken out for another mission.
Interesting.
Hmm,
Interesting. Maybe you should do it.
hmm,
One distinct feature of your movies is that perhaps not many people, I think, realize they know it, but they don't realize it. Is the cadence of the lines, the way your characters speak. And since you were the one who always, I think, yeah, one distinct feature of your movies is the cadence in which your characters speak. And since you were the one who wrote all the lines and dialogues, I'm interested to know that how is it that you arrive at the way a character speaks? It could be Gabbar, it could be Surma Bhopali, it could be even Yunus Parvez in some small little bit. Everybody has some distinct cadence.
Because
Tell me a bit.
everybody has in this world, everybody has a style of talking. One is not even aware of it. Their stresses are different, their construction of sentences is different, and their tempo, their energy level are different, and their vocabulary is different. Their vocabulary shows their upbringing, their class, their socio-political or socio-economic background. So if you are sensitive to words, uh, then you know that this is the person. This person will have this kind of vocabulary. This person will say this in such words. So if you are word sensitive, words are very interesting thing. Words are not only what they are in the dictionary. Words are much more than that. There are no two words in the world who mean exactly the same. Every word is an individual and strictly an individual. In dictionary, they can have the same meaning, but in life they are not. Words are like people. When a person enters whom you don't know much, so the first thing that hits you is the physical appearance of the person. Then the person is introduced to you. So now, oh, he's a doctor. And then you ask him, where do you live? And when he tells you that I'm actually from such and such city, and that's and then you find the association. I have two friends, very good friends in that same city. Do you know any one of them? And he says, yes, yes, I know that particular gentleman. And that is how slowly you discover the class of the person, and you can put him in a certain slot that this is what the person is. He's a doctor. Now, same way, a word carries a meaning, like a man carries a profession. But man is not only profession. Okay, apple. Apple's vocation is to mean a fruit which is red. But that's not the only thing. When you say apple, so many references are made in your mind. Same way, this word is also known by the company it keeps, where it was used, where have you heard it so often. And that is how you understand the word. So if you have this kind of interest in it and understanding, then you will choose the right word. What this man will say, this person will not use this word. He'll use that word.
The word, the company that it keeps, that's a fascinating way to put it, Mr. Akhtar.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of which, again, in Sholay, there are so many lines, but one line which still lives and breathes in many different political contexts is "Itna sannada kyun hai bhai?" It's in so many memes. I mean, you could have said "itni." So, tell me a bit about it. A line like that, it has its context in the movie, but when it detaches itself from a movie and then lives on, what do you feel as a writer?
You see, he was a blind man. The only difference he could feel was the lack of sound.
Absolutely.
One. Besides that, in the Sannata Kyun Hai Bhai, you have really taken out the dialogue and made it actually much more meaningful. Thank you. But the fact is that Sannata creates sometimes indifference. Just the other day I was talking about it. We have so many moments that tigers should not be killed and hunting is bad and so on. I have never heard this about fishing.
Exactly.
Never. Actually, fishing is supposed to be a game of people who are at peace. And fishing means tranquility. Now let
Yeah,
us look how tranquil it is for the fish.
it is so violent. That
You
hook.
know, you enter a room and you see some favorite sweet of yours hanging, and you go and try to eat it, and a hook comes and goes through your palate, and then you are pulled, and you are pulled to a place where there is no oxygen, and before you are dead, they start skinning you. This is what fishing is. But why nobody is aware of this sadistic cruelty? There is only one reason. Fish doesn't have vocal cords.
Interesting.
So if the society doesn't have vocal cords, nobody will know what is happening to the society. You need to have vocal cords.
बिल्कुल चिल्लाओगे नहीं तो सुनेगा कौन ये बात है ना. Now this is remarkable. But you know, this fish is something because in this country where I live in the U.S., fishing is such a big deal. Father and son bonding over fishing.
And they
मैं
believe
अक्सर
this is
हाँ
ultimate tranquility. This is ultimate
बिल्कुल
peace. How wonderful they are. They go for fishing.
yeah
They are nice people. And look what nice people do. And nobody has noticed because fish cannot cry.
right. You know, to change again gears a bit, you've been practically a poet all your life from a very early age, and at least in terms of your sensibility. That's my sense. How is it that early on, when your movies were doing so well, did you ever feel compelled to say that maybe I should write a song for this one, be it
No,
Divar, Sholay? Did you
actually,
ever?
no. At that time, I was not a poet. I was not writing poetry. Actually,
Oh,
I
you
have
were not.
started.
Okay.
No, I was not. I started writing poetry at an age where people generally stop writing poetry.
Okay.
I was perhaps 30, 31 when I started writing poetry.
Acha.
And most of the poets, at least whom I know of, have done their major work in their 20s. So perhaps 30 becomes a bit old like a Olympians. It's an old age for a poet also. So,
Ji.
that is how it was. My priorities would. I knew that I can write poetry, but
That's what I meant.
but I knew what is good poetry. You know, ignorance gives you certain confidence, which I'm afraid I did not have because I knew what is good poetry. I
Okay.
remembered hundreds and thousands of couplets, I still remember, of other people. So I was scared that if I write poetry, will I be as good or even near
Oh,
this standard? So perhaps it stopped me for a while. I could suggest a line to my friends who were poets. ये line ऐसे लिख लो. But I never wrote myself. But ultimately, as they say, सुबह का भूला शाम को घर आ जाता. So poetry is my ghar. Since my
हाँ.
7 generations are poets. So I
Ji,
had to
ji.
come back. So I did.
Yeah. You know, speaking of which, if you were to say choose one song either from Diwar or Sholay or any movie, Majboor, कहीं से भी, see ये दोस्ती हम नहीं तोड़ेंगे. If you were to write it in the same situation, the same song to the same composition by the great Rahul Dev Burman, uh, how do you assess Ye Dosti?
No, it's a very popular song, very, very popular song. And I believe Mr. Anand Bakshi was an exceptionally talented writer.
Absolutely.
Exceptionally.
No, no, no. I'm not even for a
And
moment suggesting
no.
otherwise.
Like, if you ask me which is your favorite song from Indian film music, I'll say "Zindagi ke safar mein guzar jate hai jo maqam."
Indeed, you said.
Brilliant song. So, and Sahir, Majroor, Shailendra, सबने ही बहुत अच्छे काम किया है. मगर ये कि उनके बारे में अपने सीनियर्स के बारे में सोचे मैंने लिखा होता तो क्या कैसे लिखता मैं सोचता नहीं. मैं आरडी के साथ आई हैव डन अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क like Sagar, like 1942, A Love Story, and so on. And mostly our work was appreciated, which we did together. And unfortunately, he died much earlier than he should have.
Right, right,
Perhaps
right.
he was hardly 50.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, no. What I meant was because it's an interesting exercise that how does a different poet or a lyricist approach a song like "Ye Dosti Hum Nahi Todenge."
It
Uh,
was a
but you
wonderful
think
song.
it obviously it fits perfectly in the way Bakshi Saab wrote.
Yeah, yeah. Bakshi Saab uh, has written perhaps few thousand songs, 3,000 or 4,000, whatever. All the songs are not masterpieces, of course, because if you write so much, you can't be good all the time. But if you collect his exceptionally good song, that too, that number will be higher than many poets' complete work,
Right.
songwriters' complete work. So
Bilkul, bilkul.
he was an exceptionally talented person. There's no doubt about it.
Right. Why is it that since your split, there has not been the emergence of any writer who managed to grab as much marquee attention as the two of you did? It's almost as if yours is a freakish accident.
It was rather freakish, because I mean I have great respect for young writers, and I think many of them are doing very good work. But you see, you need consistency. People don't accept you very easily. You have to keep on proving yourself right again and again and again and again, and in different setups. So then they accept कि नहीं भाई इनमें कुछ बात है. तो वो consistency नहीं है. I can't think of. I can name certain films where the writer's work is brilliant, and I feel surprised that, you know, actually incompetent, that whether I'll be able to do such a good work, but at the same time, that consistency is missing. Okay, one after another, 4, 5 films which are not only good but successful in film industry, because ultimately it's an industry, not only film. So you have to be good, of course, but you have to be successful also. So your film should be good and successful. So often it happens that you see a good film, but it doesn't make much noise on the box office. So
Right,
रह जाता है. You need both the things, and constantly, not once, again and again and again. That has not happened.
right. I mean, 24 films and 22 blockbusters. I think it's perhaps unparalleled in any
Yeah,
other
yeah,
movie
yeah,
industry.
yeah, yeah. It happened.
Uh,
And do
do
you
you
know?
ever?
Let me tell
Gee,
you one thing. I mean, it's a strange happening. Till Trishul, which was written by 76, 78 पे release हुई, and we started working from 70, 71. For first 6, 7 years, we did not have an idea that there can be a second version of dialogue or screenplay. All that you have seen before that, the first film where we rewrote certain scenes was Trishul.
I see.
Otherwise, whether Diwar or Zanjeer or uh, any film for that matter before that, these are first versions. Dawn, first version.
So
Never
first
rewrote
draft
them.
is the final draft.
First draft is the final draft. That's all. Whether the screenplay or the dialogue. It was never rewritten. Anything. So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing. But आप कहे ना कहे विनम्र होने की बात वगैरह, I respect all that. But both of you, you and Mr. Khan, I met him just once, but even during that meeting, one could see absolutely raging self-assurance, self-belief. I I don't think I've seen that in too many Hindi cinema, or perhaps in any other Hindi cinema writer, that you are so completely self-assured about your craft, and to having two people simultaneously, that's
Yes.
very
Agar
rare.
now, you see, we proved right so many times, so it was confidence and self-assured. If it were, we would have gone wrong, then it would have been called conceit and arrogance.
Gee.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, it is the result that decides whether it is self-assurance or uh, arrogance.
no, but quality भी अपने आप में चीज है ना, whether or not it
Ah,
succeeds. Quality है whether it succeeds or not, right?
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Just last few things, Mr. Akhtar. There is an interesting detail in Diwar, जब Iftikhar or Sudhir, अपने जूते पॉलिश करवा रहे होते हैं। वो मैं डायलॉग की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, वहाँ वो दोनों हाथ में हॉर्स रेसिंग की बुकलेट लेके बात कर रहे हैं। एंड इफ्तिकार पूछ रहे हैं ये दो नाम, रॉयल सल्यूट और हल्ला गुल्ला, घोड़े
अच्छा
के नाम है।
जी
Now, these are such charming names, Halla Gulla. Now, I know this is too far back, and maybe you didn't even think of these details while writing it.
जी
But how? I mean, Halla Gulla for a horse. Where does that come from?
Actually, I don't have any memory. Thank you for reminding me. But maybe there was a horse at that time. I don't know. I don't remember that how this
Just,
thought came to be.
it's replete with. That's what I'm saying. Your body of work is replete with such throwaway, interesting details. And within the context that you are operating, commercial Hindi cinema, and the fact that you are so unbelievably successful, that burden is something else. I'm surprised that after that you didn't feel tempted to repartner and say, let's try another couple of movies.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's almost 40 years when we parted.
Right.
It was 1981. We parted in 1981, so it is more than 40 years, I suppose.
More than 40 years.
Uh,
Just last couple
ah,
of things. I'm told you're writing a new movie,
yes,
or you've
I have
already written it.
actually I have written a couple of scripts, not only one, and it started. This process started during uh, uh, Corona, and because we couldn't go anywhere, and I was also stranded in my Khandala house, so I started writing. वैसे भी मुझे somewhere I was feeling that people have almost forgotten that I was a script writer also. They only know me now as a poet or a songwriter. So high
Absolutely.
time I must do something again. So there were a couple of ideas that uh, I liked. I was inspired. One of them I shared with my daughter Zoya, and she got very excited and she said, "You must write it. I would like to make this film." So I have finished the script. I have yet to narrate it to Zoya. Zoya
I
is she is a very tough customer.
Yeah,
She
she looks it. She
doesn't,
looks
yeah,
it.
she doesn't accept everything. So I don't know. I'm rather scared that when I'll narrate it to her, what will be her reaction. But the other script is taken by Mr. Boni Kapoor, and he's
I see.
making. It's going to. It has not gone on the set, but it will.
Can
So
you force?
these
I know you cannot reveal the details. I don't want the details, but in terms of genre, what kind of mood are we talking about for
You
both
see,
films?
I have always believed, and I think this is the belief, this has been the belief of Salim-Javed, that many people think that you can be either sensible or entertaining. I mean, these are alternatives. These are two choices. But
No,
we never believe that. We believe that a film which has proper morality and has certain dignity, certain class, and at the same time it can be highly entertaining and it will grasp the attention of uh, major audience. So that is how it is. It's a mainstream film. Both of them are mainstream pictures, but scripts. But at the same time, they are not absurd or they are not cheap, which we have never done. We have certain holds barred. We had, and even today in this script that I have done, there are certain holds barred. No, it cannot. I can. In my whole career, I have not written a single line which can be called vulgar or double meaning
absolutely.
by any stretch of imagination. And our characters have certain dignity. You would notice one thing that our villains are wicked, vicious, sadistic, but not perverts,
Absolutely.
not lecherous. They are not interested at all there. On
Absolutely.
the contrary, in one of our films, there is a dialogue about it that Rakhi is kidnapped by the villain Shakal, and he says that you will remain here in my den till your husband comes to find you.
Gee.
So she gets
Yeah.
slightly tense that what does he mean if I'm going to live here, and what he intends. So he understands the tension on her face, and he says that nahi nahi, Mr. Shiv Kumar, आप परेशान मत होइए मेरे पास इन बेकार बातों के लिए वक्त ही नहीं
I remember that very well.
yeah
But even in Zanjeer, if you look at Ajit's character, very suave, very
yeah,
sophisticated, very
yeah,
polished.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't go down a notch from that level.
Not at all, not
Even
at all.
I suppose that's your personal
I mean,
upbringing or your personal taste
yeah,
that
yeah.
reflects.
He had a mistress, Mona Darling, but that's all. I mean, uh, a person like Ajit has the right to have a mistress. उसमें क्या? Uh,
And finally, before I let you go, Javed Saab,
yeah,
you did only one movie with the great, redoubtable Dilip Kumar. You did Mashal? Which one did you do?
yeah, Mashal, Mashal.
That I stand corrected. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't change my question. Someone of that caliber, when you write for him, is there something special that you do, or you just write the way you write, nevertheless?
No, no. If you are working with actors like, say, Amitabh Bachchan or Dilip Kumar, you know that you can put the weight on the actor and the actor will carry it. Sometimes when you feel that the actor has limited talent and moral range, then you don't give him that weightage. You make the scene easier for him. But
Right.
these actors, could carry anything. Amitabh Bachchan, you give him any scene, he'll do it with competence. You give him any lines, he'll make them natural. He'll make them effective because he has that range. So with such kind of actor, you can, push the envelope that you know that this actor will carry it.
Right. In Shakti, again, it's completely inane line. I seem to have some thing for inane lines, but the way Dilip Kumar intoned it, भाई कमाल करते हो तुम अगर खुद नहीं समझते तो कम से कम पूछ लिया करो. I mean, it's a pretty straight line, but the way he says it, it
Ah,
sounds profound.
yeah, yeah, this is how elders used to talk. This
Right.
was their way of talking. ये बड़ों की वोकेबलरी ऐसी ही थी एक जमाने
जी जी जी.
में जब
No,
बेटे जब चुपचाप सुन लिया करते थे बेटे तो बाप ऐसे बोलते थे अब नहीं बोलते
अब बाप बोलते ही नहीं है.
जी जी
No, wonderful, Javed Saab. Always a great pleasure. I hope it was worth your while.
थैंक यू
I rushed through, and अब शिकागो कभी आइए तो बताइएगा.
जरूर